Well, hey there, friends. I hope this finds you doing well. So today in the Christian Marriage podcast series, I'm going to talk about the difference between the covenant and the party. I think it's necessary for us to try to tease out those parts because they're both important, but one is more important than the other, and so I want to talk about that today for the podcast. Let me just start with a little story about my mom and dad. So back in the 40s, my father had just returned from the Second World War and met my mom, and they dated for a little while, and then they got married. And their marriage service consisted of two friends who served as witnesses, the pastor. The service was held in the pastor's living room, which they called the parlor. So it was in the pastor's parlor. It probably was in the manse, wherever the place was that the pastor lived, probably owned by the church, and that was it. And I'm sure maybe there were some family there, but I don't even know that for certain. They just said they had their witnesses, the pastor, and they were there, of course, and then they had the service. So, and they got married, and license was signed, witnesses signed, everything, and they stayed married for 45, 50 years. So I want to preface my remarks with that little story because you see, at the end of the day, the most important part of your wedding ceremony will be the covenant service. It's not the party afterwards, it's not the destination, it's not the dress, it's none of those things. So in a covenant service, and I'll go over this more next time, because next time I want to talk about the elements in the service, but just basic, or just for right now, just an overview. You have the question, you have the father giving away the bride, you have the vows that are spoken by the bride and the groom. You have the gift that's given and exchanged, usually a ring, and then you have a meal. Now, those are the basic elements of a covenant service. For Christian marriage, you would also have prayer to begin and end the service. You would have usually there's a sermon. In most of the time, there's inspirational music that fits the moment. During the service, sometimes it's live music, sometimes it's recorded music. You have the pomp of the witnesses coming into the service, and then of course the bridal march, which is also an important part of the service. You don't have to have a bridal march, but it's important to highlight that she's the gift of the father to this man, and they're making one new family. So all those things are very important in the service. So I'll go through more of that next time, but put that up against today and how we layer on so many other things that really become more important and put a lot of stress on the bride, on the bride's family, on the groom's family, and on everybody connected with it. So the party sometimes becomes more important than the service itself. And of course, we've got shows today, like, I don't know if it's still on, but we used to be that show called She Said Yes to the Dress, or Yes to the Dress, or whatever it was, where the brides would come into the bridal shop and search for the dress, that they were going to wear at their wedding, and had to be the perfect dress. And they're spending thousands and thousands of dollars on these designer dresses. You can get married without a designer dress, right? And stay married for a very long time without a designer dress. There are just ways in which you can spend more money than you can make in a year, or in 10 years, or in 100 years on a wedding. Destination weddings are some. That's a new addition. The service after, the party after, with all the elements of food and music and dining and things for the people to do, and dances, and this kind of dance and that kind of dance. You know, you'll be married because of the covenant service, not because you had the daddy-daughter dance or because you took off your intended's garter and shot it into the crowd of eligible bachelors. You know, all those things are just extra. They're pieces to the party that we've created that really have nothing at all to do with marriage. I mean, they're fun. It's all very fun. But listen, for a Christian marriage to be Christian, there's one thing that's essential, and that is that it be made to magnify Christ. The marriage must be centered on Christ. There must be some recognition that what we're witnessing there on that platform is an image of Christ in the church. There should be some indication of that in the service. Making much of Christ is very important in a wedding service, and it must be done, especially if it's a Christian marriage. You must do that. May I just say something to the ladies for a moment? Ladies, please be modest in your selection of attire for yourself and for your bridesmaids. This is not, we're not to make the wedding into some sexual ideal, okay? It's not about that. It's about a commitment, a lifelong commitment, and vows that are taken, promises made, all in the name of Christ. Especially in a Christian marriage, please be modest in your attire. And gentlemen, also, please be modest in your attire. Respect where you're going to be. You're going to be standing before the Lord. You're going to be making promises that are promises for a lifetime. Dress for the occasion. Don't dress outlandishly. Don't dress outside of that scope of where you're going to be for the service. And remember that in all things, that after the party and after the wedding, after the covenant service, maybe I should put it like that, after the covenant service, you're still married, right? So whether you have a party or not, don't stress on that. Whether you have a DJ, don't stress about that. Whether you have the right flowers, don't stress about that. Whether you have the right dress, don't stress about that. Whether you have the right venue, don't stress about that. Whether or not you are able to hire a wedding planner, don't stress about that. Because the thing that's going to be remembered, the thing that's going to last for your entire married life, is the fact you made a vow at a covenant service and you've kept that vow. That's the thing that's going to last. So I've seen a lot of things. I've done a lot of weddings, been to a lot of parties, and I'm not against parties. I like parties well enough, but just remember, let's not put the party above the covenant service. They're two different things. And if the party becomes the focus of the ceremony, then you've lost something very important, especially for a Christian marriage. The thing that should be focused on and central in the Christian marriage is making much of Christ, seeing that wedding ceremony, the covenant ceremony, as a picture of Christ and the church. You need to make a point to say that during the service. And you need to watch, how you dress and what you do, so that everything from the covenant service all the way through the meal, through the party, everything is honoring to Christ, okay? The music, the food, the dress, everything should be honoring to Christ. Because I've seen a lot of so-called Christian marriages, can I use the air quote Christian marriages? And I'm very Christian because they don't honor Christ. And there's more concern given to the elements of the service than to Him. So I hope this finds you well, and I hope this helps. Look for the video next time about the elements of the service, and I'll see you then.